Welcome back to another episode of The Green Room. I'm your host, Jeff Farragher. And for those of you who don't know me, I have the distinct pleasure of being the music and artistic director of our Symphony of the Kootenays. This is a really exciting episode, and before we get to our guests, I'd like to take a moment to thank our supporters, the BC Arts Council, Columbia Basin Trust, and all of our contributors for their ongoing support of the Symphony and many of the important arts organizations in our region. I'd also like to thank our board of directors for their tireless effort for keeping a symphony orchestra going right here in the Kootenays. And of course, we are so grateful for you, our audience, listeners and supporters, who make all of this worthwhile both on and off the stage. Please take a moment to hit that like button below and share our content with your friends. Also, hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with our content. This evening, we're trying something new. Immediately following the premiere of this presentation, please join myself and our three amazing guests for a live discussion via Zoom. Just click the link in the video description below, as well as over in the live chat, where we will be posting the link several times to make sure you don't miss it. You can go ahead and click that link right now and ensure that you get into the waiting room, and as soon as our presentation tonight is finished, you'll be automatically brought into the discussion. This is a great opportunity to engage with us, ask the guests questions, or just listen to the discussion. That should start around 8:15 Mountain and 7:15 Pacific, so don't miss it. Now, without further ado, let's get to our guests for this evening. I am joined tonight by three of our core cellists of the Symphony. Anne Scott, our dedicated and longtime principal, Shirley Wright, and Liz Tremblay all hail from Calgary and bring their expertise, passion, and commitment to the orchestra. Hello, SOTK cellists.
Hello, Jeff. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. I've been very much looking forward to this evening's performance because, of course, everybody knows as a cellist, I always love working and talking with you all. So how has this year been for each of you so far? I know that's a tough question, but looks like you've been up to some really exciting things. So share with us some of the highlights of this past year.
I think the highlight of my year has been learning a lot about playing with a Baroque bow and learning about a lot of different composers in the Baroque style. And I've also had the chance to travel a little bit, oddly enough, in Canada, but a little quarantine out on the East Coast to visit some family. And so it's been really quite lovely, and I feel privileged that I got to do that.
How about you, Liz? What have you been up to this year?
A lot of recording and getting used to technology in a big way, teaching online as well for the whole year. And my students have been amazing. I am amazed at how adept they are. Just done exams with them and they've all done really, really well. So it's been good.
How about you, Anne? What's your year been like?
Well, I've been transitioned, of course, everything is online now. And so I teach mostly adults. So I have to say that for my adults, for some of them, this was a huge learning curve to transition to online. And we know sometimes it feels a little tenuous, but I think for the most of us, we've really gotten in the groove and come a long way. And I think we make good progress in lessons, which is the other thing I was concerned about. It's different, of course, than in person. And I've been doing some projects online, a little bit of recording, and I teach generally in a summer camp for adults in the summer. And so we transitioned that, and it's an orchestra base, and chamber music base. So it was pretty tricky changing that to an online experience, but we just modified it somewhat, made some lectures, and we did technique classes and stuff. So yeah, a lot of fancy footwork, just sort of figuring out some things that keep people inspired and engaged.
Certainly, our last performance, which was over a year ago now, can you believe it?
My last experience with public performing was literally a day or two before lockdown. And even at that point, we had no idea how lucky we were. It was with an adult orchestra that I conduct, and we had our final concert. I think it was March 11th or something like that, whatever the Tuesday was. Yeah, thinking back to, like you asked, thinking back to our last performance with Symphony of the Kootenays, it just seems a little surreal that it was that long ago. And of course, you don't realize that that's going to be the last time to get together for a while. So,
I remember just being so inspired by those voices and just feeling that connection that the audience felt too. We all feel it as musicians. And myself, I did do some outdoor performances in the summertime.
How about you, Liz? You have been working a lot with technology.
I certainly have, yeah, through my church job that I have, and working with my choir. I actually call them quarantine because we get together every week, and it's challenging, but we do manage to do recordings together somehow, and sometimes they're a little bit more dubious than others, and sometimes exciting things happen that have to be moved out. But it's also given me the opportunity. We live stream these services, and so I can actually play.
So, Anne, you've been living in Calgary and performing and teaching, and you've made quite a name for yourself there for as long as I've known you. But maybe our listeners would like to know a little bit more about your history in music, where you trained, where you grew up, and those sorts of things.
Sure. Well, I started my studies in Edmonton, and I was a Suzuki baby, but I was an old Suzuki baby. So I don't quite qualify, except I was lucky enough to be there when the Suzuki program started in Edmonton, and benefit from everything they had to offer and the teachers that they had. Yeah, so that's where I did most of my studying. And the Edmonton Youth Orchestra at the time, and as it is now, was a really wonderful learning experience. And I got to play in the orchestra at the U of A and the chamber music groups there. And that's where I'd really developed my love for ensemble playing, I have to say. And then further studies were in Calgary, where I got to do the diploma program for music performance at Mount Royal College. Yeah, with our young family, we moved to Ottawa, which was a wonderful experience because I got to play with the Ottawa Symphony there, and really big repertoire, because it was in contrast to what the smaller NAC orchestra could offer. So that was great. And then we went back to Edmonton, and I played with the Edmonton Symphony as an extra. Then we moved back to Ontario, went to and lived in Oakville. And once again, there's an Oakville orchestra, but there was also, in that whole GTA area, there was opportunities to perform and gig and play, which was a really great opportunity for me. And I learned a lot. And then I landed finally back in Calgary, and was really lucky to connect with some of my old colleagues and friends, and also to, learn about this music scene in Calgary, and also then into BC. So Prince George Symphony there for a while too. So
right.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate to have all these various experiences.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you've definitely made a name for yourself, both as a performer and as a teacher. So I'm familiar with the chamber music program you do for adults there. Just share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm just really enjoying working with adults, I have to say. Initially, about 10, 11 years ago, I started with the Calgary Community String Orchestra, and that's for beginner to intermediate string players. And then after a few years of getting that going, we sort of decided that there was too big of a break in the spring, and it was a great opportunity to have chamber music opportunities. So we founded the chamber music series there, which is 6 weeks of coaching for string quartets with really fine chamber music, with really fine musicians as their coaches. And so, yeah, that was great. And all of that sort of morphed into the summer camp at the Valhalla Summer School of Music. And we have a 1-week retreat there. So,
yeah, that's a fantastic program that you've been doing. And I've been fortunate enough to come in and work with your students, which has been really, really exciting. Now, some of our listeners may know this, some of them may not, but before I stepped on the podium as the conductor of the Symphony of the Kootenays, of course, I played cello in the section. I was actually given the principal cello position back in, I think it was 2007. You were not there that year. And so I didn't really know much about you until the following year when my friend said, "Oh, I think Anne Scott's coming back to play with us." And I said, "Oh, wasn't she the principal before me?" And I kind of admittedly got a little bit nervous about how this was going to work. We had a previous principal coming back, and I'm some new guy that's in town. And, admittedly, I was a little bit nervous about that. But then I met you for the first time, and just all of that melted away so fast. It's been such a wonderful relationship working with you. I think if you could share with the listeners a little bit more about your history with the Symphony of the Kootenays.
Sure. Well, I was really lucky to my first experience with the Symphony of the Kootenays was by invitation by a wonderful local cellist, Magdi Zabenyi, who was playing with Symphony of the Kootenays at the time, and they needed an extra cellist. And so that's how I got to play, and just ended up staying.
Probably travel. Of course, you travel to play with the Symphony of the Kootenays, and that's a whole adventure unto itself, which we're going to discuss a little bit later with everybody. But certainly you also play with other orchestras around the region. You play with the Red Deer Symphony. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about sort of your travels and experiences with other orchestras in Western Canada?
Sure. Yeah, I have to say, like I've mentioned this before, I just feel really fortunate to have all these variety of experiences. So I meet different people. I have different experiences with different conductors. And so I mentioned Prince George. They used to fly us up back in the day. Can you imagine flying with your cello? And yeah, it was crazy. But I've been lucky enough to sub with Kamloops Symphony on occasion, and with the Okanagan Symphony. And Symphony of the Kootenays. And so those have all been really great opportunities for me.
You're based in Calgary, but it seems like you have a pretty strong connection with BC and the interior, playing with those different orchestras. And how about some of the organizations you work with in Alberta?
Oh yeah, sorry. So I'm really fortunate to play with the Red Deer Symphony on occasion. They have all their rehearsals in Calgary, so that part of it's easy. And then we go up for the dress rehearsals and the concert. But that's a wonderful opportunity. I also play with the Calgary Civic Symphony, and really great repertoire. Working with Ralph Birch is great, and we play at the Jack Singer, which is really a great opportunity to play in a big, beautiful hall like that.
Yeah, that's a really special opportunity to get. And yeah, you're so fortunate to work with these great directors and great colleagues in all those orchestras. I know so many people that are involved in them. That's really, really exciting. Well, that's really great. And do you want to share with our listeners what they're about to hear and see?
Yeah, I thought you might enjoy listening to the prelude of the first Bach suite. If you don't know, he wrote 6, and this is the first one. And it seems to be a piece that a lot of people have heard and connect to, and it's championed by Pablo Casals, I think.
It's a lovely, lovely work. Thanks, Anne. This is the G Major Prelude by Bach. That was beautiful. Thank you, Anne. Now we're going to speak with Shirley Wright. So lots of our listeners, of course, used to seeing you playing in this section. Often you're sitting with some of our student players from time to time. You're always there helping and coaching people out. Of course, education is a big thing for you. Do you want to share with our listeners some of your background in music, performing, as well as going around the country, learning to teach and doing that as well?
Sure. Yeah, so actually I came out to Calgary in 2003 because I got a job. Well, actually, I didn't have the job yet. And I was kind of headhunted by the Calgary Board of Education to start a string program, which I led for about 14 years at Central Memorial High School. And that's always been a passion of mine because I'm from the East Coast. And actually, I just came across this picture. Can you see this? This
cool. Yeah.
That's my orchestra from when I was a kid. And I'll never forget this day. In grade 4, they came into my math class and they said, anybody who's doing okay in math, you can come and learn violin 2 days a week. And I was like, yes, get me out of here. So
Nice.
that's when I got started in a string program. And East Coast has always had top-notch music education. So it's been really important to me. When we actually landed out here in Calgary, I was trying to find a school that had a string program, and that wasn't that available. So lucky enough, I got to start one and worked at it for years, and it's still going now.
Yeah, of course, that program at Central is a really, really amazing program. I've had the opportunity to teach there as well. You did some really good work in setting that up. I think you created something really special there. So thank you for that, and on behalf of all the students that get to enjoy it. A mark of a great teacher, of course, is someone who's always looking to continuously learn. And you're doing some of that right now, aren't you? You're kind of teaching yourself something sort of new on the cello.
So I met a cellist. Her name's Eleanor Frey. She was performing in Calgary, and when I heard her play, I kind of felt like, it was so clean and beautiful, simple music, and her style of performing the Baroque instruments. I just felt, I don't know, I had a special, a real love developed for me with that instrument. And Anne actually lent me a Baroque bow that a friend of ours had given to her. And so I have a Baroque bow. I put gut strings on my cello. I put away my end pin. So you don't use an end pin. You just hold it with your calf muscles. So it's a little bit different, the technique and the style, all the ornamentation, all of that kind of stuff. It just lends such it's just a whole nother approach into the instrument.
Of course, yeah. There's something about Montreal and Baroque music, and there's quite a big community there.
Yeah, and you and I actually both went to McGill.
That's right. There's another shared connection.
Yeah, and
Nice.
After that, I don't know if you know this, I won a job playing with the Kamloops Symphony Orchestra. I was hired to come out and be the principal there with Bruce Dunn. And I had just had my first child and moved across the country. And settled in Kamloops. It was quite an adventure. Anyway, we ended up going back to the East Coast for another, I guess, about 10 years before we came back west.
You also have other facets of your career, don't you? Do you want to share some of that with us?
Sure, yeah. Well, I used to play in a Latin flamenco band back on the East Coast, so that's pretty fun. So since I stopped teaching, I got my real estate license and started working with Remax, selling real estate in Calgary. So I've done that for the last 5 years.
You have a connection with BC musically as well as for your family. Do you want to share with us some of those important connections that you have with BC?
Sure. So when I being in Kamloops, playing out there for a year, that was pretty fabulous. Actually, before that, even when I first graduated, I was auditioning for Boris Brott was starting an orchestra in Vancouver, and my boyfriend, or my husband now, we were in Prince Edward Island and said, hey, there's an audition in Vancouver, let's go. So we drove across the country in a van to practicing in the back of the van every time we stopped, getting ready for this audition. And anyway, by the time we got there, their funding had been pulled and there was no audition.
Oh, that's awful.
And in BC, well, I've always loved coming to the Kootenays. Coming from a small town like Charlottetown, you get the opportunities to hear great live music are few and far between. And I've always felt that, just because you live in a small town doesn't mean you shouldn't hear great live music. So I am just thrilled to be part of Symphony of the Kootenays. And I love when we go out to Nelson or that mountaintop concert in Kimberley. That's pretty memorable for me.
And so you're going to share a piece with us. Do you want to tell us what we're about to listen to?
Sure. So this is a piece that I wrote. I've written a couple pieces for solo cello. This is Rhapsody for cello. And I've performed it with orchestras. I've performed it with drummers, with dancers. I remember
I'm sure
I performed it once in Quebec with a dancer. And I remember at one point looking up and this dancer was on her head spinning like, those break dancers do. That added a neat element to the piece. Gotta say.
Very cool. All right. Well, this is Rhapsody for Cello by Shirley Wright. And now we're going to chat with Liz Tremblay, who is our third cellist that comes down from Calgary. Hi, Liz.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. It's great to have you with us. So, of course, Liz, you would be our sort of newest addition to the Symphony of the Kootenays regular core cello section. How long have you been living in Calgary?
We came to Calgary in 2012.
Okay.
Prior to that, we actually came to Canada in 2005. But before that, I was in Bermuda for many years.
In Bermuda. Well, tell us about that. What was life like in Bermuda, and why the heck
Well,
did you leave?
funnily enough, when I was doing my audition for the Kingston Symphony, when we did move to Canada, the conductor, he said to me afterwards, we were chatting, he says, so why did you move to Canada? And the only answer you can give is for the snow and the taxes. Seriously.
Of course.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of that. No, it's, I still am terribly in love with Bermuda, and I still have a lot of connections there, a lot of friends. And actually, just a few years ago, I organized a reunion for the 40th anniversary of the Menuhin Foundation, which is what I went to Bermuda to work as part of a string quartet, as I say, a gazillion years ago. And we had players and teachers from all over the world come back into Bermuda and perform a week's worth of concerts with the kids. And it was Menuhin's 100th anniversary as well. So the two coincided. So it was pretty cool. I still have a cello in Bermuda, and right now my son is teaching music in Bermuda, and he does a show every year, which is usually why I miss the February concert, because I'm usually going off to Bermuda to play a show, which is great fun. It's a real joy to play in the pit with my son there conducting away, and that's pretty special.
Exciting. Yeah, that's right. You were not with us for our last performance, but it seemed like you were having an all right time.
Yeah, no snow.
And so then you moved to Kingston, played with the orchestra there. What was that experience like?
It was really hard coming from a tiny country, getting to Canada to have any idea where I fit in terms of standard or anything like that. It was really hard to know whether I was going to be up to the standard. So at any rate, I applied for, they did a sub position for Kingston Symphony, and I got on the sub list, and it was a terrifying interview and audition. I had no idea. And then I think I got to play one concert the first year, and it was like, it was so upsetting. Life in Kingston, I loved it eventually, but it was much harder to make a musical dent there than coming to Calgary. And I can only attribute that to the fact that it seems there's people from all over the place in Calgary.
And that was probably quite a lot more comforting for you coming to Calgary. And
I want to take my hat off to these two other young ladies that are here today, because honestly, had it not been for Anne and her incredible generous spirit and beautiful person, she opened many doors for me, and I'm so grateful. But then Anne actually asked me whether I was interested in coming down to the Kootenays. And I had no idea. I mean, in Bermuda, you would travel 10 minutes to a rehearsal.
Yeah.
And people would complain. And then I got to Canada, and I couldn't believe that I was driving in snow for 45 minutes to go and play a rehearsal. I couldn't believe it. And then that expanded the more orchestras I played with. And it got to weekends away, because I played regularly with the Peterborough Symphony. They would bring in a couple of players just for the weekend. Pretty stressful, because they had big programs, and you had to be totally on your toes. But it was a great experience, but some hair-raising driving, absolutely hair-raising.
Mm-hmm.
And and then I came here, and oh my gosh, the first one was 8 hours to Nelson.
Yes.
But there it is. Yeah.
So you've been doing a lot of traveling based out of Calgary as well for music, as you just explained. You've been traveling around playing, but you also been doing a lot of traveling as well. Do you want to share with us some of those experiences?
Yeah, not so musically related. I decided I'd always been wanting to do a Camino, and we finally decided that we were going to do it. because of being a church musician, Christmas, and my husband's a minister, Christmas is a very, very busy time. So Boxing Day comes around and we used to plan what we were going to do. And so one particular Boxing Day, I think it's 3 years ago now, we decided, okay, this is the year we're going to do our Camino. So we did. And we started in Porto in Portugal, and then walked and pedaled a bit and walked up to Santiago. And it was the hardest journey I have ever made. I kid you not. It was really painful, but I loved it. And the following year, we actually did a trip to Ireland, and we did a coastal route around there. And that was absolutely gorgeous and no pain there. So that was good. Yeah.
You were all conditioned and ready.
Something.
And so the piece that you prepared for today has something to do with this Camino, doesn't it? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
It does. Well, again, it's COVID related, because a year ago, Claude Lepalme, who's a composer out of Red Deer, decided for a project for himself, he was going to ask different people if they would like a piece written. And I thought, well, I would love a piece written. So he and I didn't know what he was going to base it on or anything, but I guess he knew that we'd done this Camino. So he based his piece for me on the Camino. So it's kind of these Basque type tunes. And the one thing I find kind of funny about it is that it's quite jolly. And for much of the trip, you can tell I was not very jolly because I was in so much pain. I mean, after the first day where we got lost and we did well over 35 kilometers and I was just dying, I had to wear my husband's boots because my feet were so swollen for the rest of the time.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, this piece is a tribute to that Camino. So it's pretty special. And I'm very grateful to him for having written it for me. So it's kind of like a world premiere.
Very exciting. This is El Camino a Santiago by Claude Lepalme. All right, that was wonderful. So now we're going to discuss a little bit as a group. What's it like to both play and travel with as a section with the Symphony of the Kootenays, and when you do it with other orchestras? And what's that like for you?
Mm. You know, I have to say, playing it with the cello section, Symphony of the Kootenays, and the whole orchestra, but right now we're just talking about the cello section. It's a really nice group to work with, beautiful human beings, very generous musically, and everyone tries their best to be prepared when they arrive.
So, of course, traveling is a big part of playing with the Symphony of the Kootenays. We encompass a massive region, probably the largest distance-wise region of all the interior BC orchestras. So, of course, you three travel 4 hours just to get to Cranbrook for the rehearsals, but of course, you've traveled much further. Do you want to tell us, Anne, about some of the highlights of the travels, as well as some of the, I guess you could call them bloopers?
Yeah, well, that's accurate. Yeah, so I think some of the favorite things are the Cinnamon Bear Cafe in Coleman.
Oh yeah, that's a favorite for many people.
Yeah, apples in Creston, hiking in Creston, the beautiful hike around Elizabeth Lake in Cranbrook. Yeah, those, and just the beautiful, I mean, at every corner, like Liz said, every corner return, the beautiful scenery. But there's been some very interesting travel stories, like being the very, very last car to get on the ferry to get to Nelson with the back of the car falling off. The battery died while we were on the ferry. They can boost you very quickly. A car's breaking down on the pass driving to Nelson.
Yeah.
Turning the corner and saying very proudly, well, I think this is going well. And we turned the corner in a snowstorm, and there was a semi-trailer sideways sliding down the mountain towards us. We gently went backwards. Driving down the highway in Alberta with wind so strong it would knock cars off the road.
We're driving up the cowboy trail there, and oh, I forgot to get gas. And then it was like holding my breath the whole way, like, oh my God, please don't run out of gas.
Of course, these adventures forge us together and really bring the section even closer together. That's really great. Thanks for sharing that with us. And Shirley, you've initiated certain projects that I've been involved with, and some that I'm sure I know you've used Liz and Anne. Sort of, there's your go-to people you'd ask to do things with. What do you feel? How do you feel that sort of that relationship? What that does for a cello section in a symphony? Because certainly we have very little rehearsal time, but most of the players most of the sections in our orchestra are always prepared. The cellos are always sort of leaders in that way. So how do you feel that plays a role?
It's interesting because a lot of orchestras, a big orchestra would have 12, 13 cellists, right? 12, it's like a big line of us way down. And so here we are with 4 cellists and 4 or 5 cellists, depending on the day. And we've really learned to blend our sounds. We've really learned to, Anne is an exceptionally gifted leader, I have to say. She's very easy to follow, and she always has everything figured out with bowings and up, down, up, down. How hard can it be, right? But it's hard to get it all worked out with all the sections. So, you know, I think we've come to have a really nice sound as a section, and I think that all the ensemble playing that we do here and there really helps that. And then I think also your leadership as a cellist on the podium, you know, you're pretty good at giving us some ideas and direction now and then. So it's like the A team right here.
Yeah, it certainly is an organic process for sure. Now, you three also, not just playing in the concert hall for concerts, you very often volunteer your services to perform in the lobby. Whose idea was that in the beginning?
Don't forget we've done Cello Chicks as well up here.
Oh, that's
right.
True. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Liz
Uh-huh.
was, the cello chick.
And I've got a whackload of music that
Yeah.
played.
And we get together
for
and
sure.
just play for fun anyhow. So when they were looking for somebody to play in the lobby before, it was kind of fun for us to do. And you've played with us, Jeff, and we actually
That's
had
right.
Jonathan play bassoon with us. So
Right.
we're not really exclusive. We are a friendly bunch.
Yes.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. Now, of course, with only having really, I mean, technically we have 3 rehearsals, but really it's only 2 by the time you get through all the music on Friday night, and then just run it all down on Saturday. What kind of work goes, you know, backstage, if you will, or you know, behind the scenes before you even get to Cranbrook? You know, Shirley, what kind of communication and expectations are happen with the group?
Well, Anne is great to send. She'll send us out an email with all the bowings pretty well put in. And then, I mean, they get adjusted in the rehearsal when we see what other sections are doing. I mean, it's done together, but, and then at home, I kind of look for the tricky bits and spend a bit of time on those. And I always try to listen to a few different recordings of what we're working on, just to have a general idea of how it's going to come together. But yeah, in general, I just have to say it's, I mean, the whole orchestra has such a nice vibe about it, right? And I think you know, you're a big part of that, Jeff, to bring everyone together and have that like, let's move this forward. And you know, you're really good at directing a rehearsal and not wasting time. You know, you I think are very well prepared when we get to a rehearsal as well. So.
Well, I think we all have to spend that time before we get there, because there's just, as you always keep reminding us, there's just not, there isn't the time on the weekend, and we need to be there making music and not making decisions.
Yeah.
Liz, you've played with some pretty large orchestras from pretty far afield. How would you say the symphony compares, or playing in our cello section would compare to the ones that you've had experience with, just in regards of sort of interpersonal issues and how things are handled?
I think our lovely section is very collegiate, as I said, and much more supportive of each other. I know I have played in orchestras, and I'm sure you guys have too, where you felt like there's kind of this stabbing going on in your back, and it doesn't make for a very happy time. In an orchestra I played with, the leader, if he had to say something, it wouldn't be really pleasant, and you know, you don't need your players to bristle, because they're not going to play as well as they should. So I think it's great. I mean, we're all prepared to take criticisms because it's respectful. So and that makes me happy enough to, you know, travel all the way down for a nice weekend.
Yeah,
you know, rather than a stressful experience. There's no point. I'd rather not play.
Yeah, and that's certainly something that's made my job as a director a lot easier. Of course, taking the podium and directing an orchestra, and certainly even when I do have to turn to a cello section, there's that little voice in the back of the head being, "Don't be a micromanager," you know. But it's always so nice to just turn and see your eyes, and you're there, and you're engaged, and you're all ready to hear what needs to be said and adapt that and do what needs to be done. Of course, the 3 of you work so well together because you're used to playing together, traveling together, but of course you're not the entire section of the cello section of the Symphony of the Kootenays, are you, Anne?
No, and we have special love for Sophia. She's from Creston, and an amazing adult learner cellist, just blows me away. And she's such a great part of the team. So yeah, we're missing her here today, but we know that she has a special spot in a couple of weeks. So
Yep,
I
she's
look
going to
forward
be
to
on the
seeing them.
show with us very soon. Always such a treat to work with you all, and I certainly have missed it over the last year. But of course, we've had an opportunity to play together virtually, if you will. We've prepared two separate quartet arrangements. And you want to tell us what we're about to hear?
Sure. The first piece is something we all came across one day when we were sight reading through a piece called Cellabrations. Mark Hayes wrote the piece called Prayer of Being. So
Yes.
we really enjoyed that just from the first time we read through it, and it was lovely. And then the second piece is an arrangement of Libertango, which, you know, everybody loves Libertango.
That was truly fun, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to play with these three fine cellists after over a year apart. So wonderful. While we wrap up this episode, please remember to hit that like button below and subscribe to the Symphony of the Kootenays YouTube channel. This is our third presentation, and if you missed our first two, go ahead and check them out anytime at our YouTube channel. Also, head over to our website, sotk.ca/greenroom for a listing of showtimes and guests running throughout the spring. Looking forward to Saturday, April 10th, when I'll get the chance to speak with three of our woodwind section leaders, Orapon, Jonathan Gressel, and Barb Hume. Well, that's it for now, but please come over and join us in our open Zoom discussion by clicking the link below or in the comments section. We'll see you there.
Thank you.